Masechet Makkot Daf Tet Zayin. Yesterday we mentioned that there was a machloket between Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish regarding a case where there's a law ta'aseh, but there is also an misvat ta'aseh beforehand. When would one get lashes and when not? And there was a difference between whether you read kiyem or bitel. That machloket itself is dependent upon the following machloket of hatra'at safek. And Rabbi Yochanan, he was of the opinion that a warning that is given, even though it's uncertain when and how the person will violate, nevertheless, that warning is still a valid warning, and eventually, even later on, if the person violates, even if it's something that takes time to violate, that warning will be a warning, and one can get lashes. Whereas Resh Lakish says, Hatrat Safek La Shema Hatra'a, if it's an uncertain warning, then it's not considered a warning. A warning has to be something that is immediately before an action that is time bound, that he's going to do or not do right now, and then if he violates it, he'll get lashes. If not. But if it's something that can extend over a long period of time, or if there's some doubt about whether this is indeed even a violation, so you can't give a warning based on a doubt whether it's prohibited, or a doubt whether he has to do it now. It could be that he'll say, "Oh, I'm not violating now. I'm going to fulfill the misvat aseh later," and that warning is not a warning. And if there's no valid warning, then you cannot give lashes. All right, that's what we saw yesterday. And now we're going to continue on this theme of Hatrat Safek. V'azdu l'ta'amayhu, Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish are consistent in their opinions, what we just said, regarding Hatrat Safek, and in the following case, they also argue about the same issue. Di'itmar, Shivua she'achal kikar zeh hayom, ve'abar hayom ve'lo achala. Someone in the morning makes a vow that I will eat this loaf of bread today. At some point today, morning, afternoon, late afternoon, at some point today, I will eat it. And then the day goes by and he did not eat it. Now it's already nighttime. He never ate it. He did not fulfill his vow. Does he get lashes for that? Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish tamre tarvayu eno lokeh. Both Rabbi Yochanan and Resh Lakish agree he does not get lashes. However, their reasoning is different. Rabbi Yochanan omer eno lokeh mishum taveh lav she'en bo ma'aseh v'chol lav she'en bo ma'aseh en nokin alav. Rabbi Yochanan says that one does not get lashes because it's a law ta'aseh that has no action. How do you violate this? Well, you make a vow in the morning, I'm going to eat this. And then he goes and takes a nap for all the rest of the day. He violates by just sitting and doing nothing, by not eating it. And therefore, any time that you violate a law ta'aseh with inaction, then you do not get lashes. You can't get lashes for inaction. And that's why in this case, there is no lashes. Resh Lakish omer eno lokeh mishum dehave hatra'at safek v'chol hatra'at safek lo shema hatra'a. Resh Lakish agrees on the law that there's no lashes, but for a different reason. He says because you do not get lashes since there was no proper warning. Because the warning is only on safek, and anytime there's an uncertain warning, it's not a warning. If you can't give a warning, then you can't give lashes. Why is it an uncertain warning? Well, what are you going to do? You can tell him after he makes that vow, you're going to tell him, he makes the vow at 9 a.m. So tell him at 10 a.m. A warning. Listen, if you don't eat this bread, then you're going to get lashes. And then so the guy could say, oh, I'm not eating it now. I'm going to eat it for lunch. I'm going to eat it at 12. So that warning, it does not apply. It may apply now, may apply later. So that's a hatrat safek. And then you come to lunchtime and say, oh, you better eat it now. You said you're going to eat it during lunch. No, my vow is all day. I can eat it later. And so since at any point of the day, he can always still wait and not violate. So at any point that you would give a warning, that warning is, I don't know if he's actually planning on eating it now or waiting till later. So it's always a hatra'at safek all day long. And so this would apply to any prohibition that extends over time. The warning has to be immediately before the person violates it, but there's no time period by which he's going to violate it, unless you keep giving a warning all day long, every second you give him another warning. But it doesn't. That won't help, because each warning is an uncertain one, whether at that moment he will be the decision to eat it or not. And so Resh Lakish says, therefore, that's the reason it doesn't get lashes, because hatrat safek. But notice that Rabbi Yochanan does not give that reason, because Rabbi Yochanan thinks hatrat safek is a hatra'ah. So that's what he gives another reason about it not being something en bo ma'aseh. And Resh Lakish would say the opposite. Just because en bo ma'aseh, I would give lashes for en bo ma'aseh. The reason here is because it's hatra'at safek. V'tarvayu al libad Rabbi Yehuda. And interestingly, both of them rely on a statement of Rabbi Yehuda, Tanya. V'lo totiru mimenu ad boker v'anoter mimenu ad boker ba'esh tisrofu. Ba'katuv liten aseh achar lo taseh lomar she'en lokin alav divrei Rabbi Yehuda. This, the classic case of lavanitak la'aseh. It says regarding Korban Pesach, do not leave any over until the morning. Anything that is left over until the morning, you have to burn. The pasuk comes and gives an aseh after the lo ta'aseh. It gives you a way of rectifying the problem, and that teaches us that one would not get lashes for this. Even if you left it over, you don't get lashes, because you can then burn it, and by burning it, then you get rid of the lo ta'aseh. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yochanan dei kachi tama deba katuv halo ba katuv lokeh al matrat safek shema hatra'ah. Rabbi Yochanan says, I can derive something from the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. The reason why there's no malkut in this case when you left over the Passover sacrifice is only because the pasuk came and added an aseh that you can burn it. What if the pasuk did not add the misvat aseh? Then you would get lashes for leaving over the Passover sacrifice, even though this is a case where you're not violating at any single point in time, and therefore any warning that's given would be a tatrat safek. Right? You violate this by not eating it over a long period of time. So when you're going to give this warning, you're going to give it in the beginning of the night when they first begin the seder. Hey, you better eat this korban totally and don't have any left over. And the guy says, oh no, I have plenty of time. I have all night. Okay, so you come in the middle of the night while they're in their meal and they're all full, and says, oh, I can't eat another bite right now. Says, oh, you better finish it or else. Says, no, I'm just resting, and then I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to come back in 2 hours. I'll come back at 2 a.m, and then I'll eat the rest then. So at any point in time, it's that warning is not about that second that's going to happen, but about something in the future. And so what do you see? If not for the mitzvat aseh that's added on of burning it, you would get lashes. You would get lashes even though any warning that you give is always a hatra'at safek, because you never know if he's going to violate at that point. It's not a type of violation that you do at a single point in time. It extends over time, so any warning is only a safek. And so we learn from here that a hatra'at safek is a valid warning. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, and that's what he infers from Rabbi Yehuda. However, Resh Lakish also follows this statement of Rabbi Yehuda, but he has a different inference. Tama de ba'katub, halo ba'katub lokeh al malav shen bo ma'aseh lokin alav. The only reason why one does not get lashes is because the pasuk added an aseh that you can burn it. And if it was not for the aseh there, then you would get lashes for not having eaten the Korban Pesach. Well, this is a prohibition that has no action. It's violated by inaction, by just sitting there, taking a nap for the rest of the night and not eating it. That's how one violates it. So that proves that alav she'en bo ma'aseh, one would get lashes. And that's also, it seems to be a valid inference from Rabbi Yehuda. All right, so now we have two different inferences from the statement of Rabbi Yehuda, and we want to ask from one to the other, how come Rabbi Yochanan doesn't accept that of Resh Lakish and vice versa? So according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, this, you said, without the aseh, you would give lashes. So you would give lashes, even though it's lav shen bo ma'aseh. But Resh Lakish, would you not agree also that this is a hatrat safek? And you said, oh, if not for the aseh, you would get lashes. So let's just say from now on, one does get lashes for lo totiru, right? If not the aseh, we'll just ignore that part of it. But the inference part, if not for the aseh, you would get lashes for lo totiru, even though it's also a hatrat safek. So Resh Lakish, shouldn't you agree with Rabbi Yochanan, the Hatrat Safek, is a Hatra'ah? And the answer is Sabalaki Dachtanat de Rabbi Yehuda. In fact, there's two statements that quoted in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. And here's another Tana that quotes a statement in the name of Rabbi Yehuda. And Resh Lakish is going to follow this one. He's also following the one before, but only to learn one thing from it, that Hatrat Safek, something that has no ma'aseh, lav shem bo ma'aseh lokin alav. But regarding Hatrat Safek, he's going to follow the following baraita de Tanya. Hikaz ze v'chazar v'kazeh. Kilel ze v'chazar v'kilel ze. Hikaz shenehem bebat achat o kilel shenehem bebat achat chayav. Rabbi Yehuda omer bebat achat chayav b'ze achar ze patur. We're talking about a case of a woman who was married, and then she gets divorced. Now, she is supposed to wait 3 months before getting remarried, and the purpose of that is if she should bear a child, so soon after the second marriage, we want to make sure to know who the father is. So by waiting 3 months, it'll be clear if she gives birth within before 7 months of the second marriage, then surely this pregnancy was from the first guy. Whereas if it's afterwards, then it's surely from the second guy. That's if you wait 3 months. But what if she doesn't wait 3 months? What if she only waits 1 month or a few days or whatever, or anything less than 3 months? Then we will not be sure. If she gives birth after 7 months, so maybe this is let's say she waits 2 months, and then between marriages, and then she gives birth after 7 months from the second marriage. So we're not sure, is this a full-term pregnancy from the first guy, and the first guy is the father, or is this a shorter pregnancy, a 7-month pregnancy from the second guy, and the second husband is the father? So we have a child here, and we don't know who the father is. That's the setup of the case. Now, let's say this son goes and he hits both of his potential fathers. He hits one father, and then after a while, he hits the other father. Or he curses one father, and then after some time, he curses the other father. Or let's say he hits them both at the same time, or curses them both at the same time. Hits them both, it's not exactly the same time, but it means within one action, or without more than a 2-second delay, like in the Three Stooges, you slap both of them in one shot. And all those cases, according to Tanakama, he is liable because one way or another he hit both fathers. So I don't know if this guy is the father or that guy is the father. If he only hit one of them, then I would say safek, maybe he's not the father. You can't give someone lashes if we're not sure that he violated. So we don't know if this is the father or not the father. If he only hit one or cursed one. But here he hit both and cursed both. And so it doesn't really matter which one the father is, he is liable to lashes. That is Tanakama, who makes no distinction between simultaneous or one after the other. However, Rabbi Yehuda says, no, only if he hits them both at once, then he is liable. Why? Because this has to do with a forewarning. You have to give the guy a warning. Hey, listen, you're about to hit your father. You should know that you're going to if you hit your father, then you're going to get lashes. Okay, says, yeah, I know, I'm going to do so anyway. And he hits them. So if it's in one shot, so then that is a definite hatra'ah. Because surely he's hitting, one of them is his father, and so surely he's hitting them. So he warns them right before he does it, and then he hits them. That's certainly a proper hatra'ah. However, if he hits one, and then 10 minutes later hits the other, and you gave him a warning beforehand, so that warning, well, which one is it on? Is it the warning, if you give him a warning before the first guy, maybe this is the father, maybe it's not the father. That's a hatrat safek. And even if you give him another warning before he hits the second guy 10 minutes later, but that warning is also hatrat safek, because maybe this is the father, maybe it's not the father, maybe there's no prohibition here. And so any one of the warnings is a warning that is based on doubt. And a warning based on doubt is not a warning. So we see from this statement of Rabbi Yehuda in this baraita that hatrat safek is not a hatra'ah. That's why bezeh achar zeh patur. So Resh Lakish knows this baraita, And he has it on one side, and so says, look, this Baraita says that according to the Biuda, Hatrat Safek is Safek is not a Hatra'ah. So knowing that, so when he goes back and looks at this Baraita, although this case is also Hatrat Safek, okay, I'm going to leave that on the side. What I'm going to learn from this Baraita is the fact that it is a Lav Shen Bo Ma'aseh, and if it was Lo Totiru by itself, it would get lashes, because Lav Shen Bo Maaseh Lokin Alav, he's going to derive that law and not the rule about Hatrat Safek, because he has this Braita in mind also, which is according to the Biuda. Rabbi Yochanan, how come you don't agree with Resh Lakish? This case of Lo Totiru Menu Ad Boker, it certainly is a Lav Shen Bo Maaseh, you're just sitting and doing nothing. And Rabbi Yehuda said, if it were not for the aseh, lo totiru would get lashes. So why don't you agree with Resh Lakish that lav shen b'maaseh does get lashes? And the answer here is that he also has a different source in mind. Sabad lakihad amar Rav Eidi bar Avin, amar Rav Amram, amar Rabbi Yitzchak, amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda omer mishum Rabbi Yoseh HaGalili. So we have a long tradition, name of Rabbi Yochanan, who quotes Rabbi Yehuda, who says in the name of Rabbi Yoseh HaGalili. Right now we're going to assume that Rabbi Yehuda agrees with what he's quoting from Rabbi Yoseh HaGalili. Kol lo ta'aseh shebatorah, lav sheyesh bo ma'aseh lokin alav, lav she'en bo ma'aseh en lokin alav. Chutz min hanishba umemar u'v'hamekalel et chavero b'Hashem. Anytime you have a negative prohibition in the Torah, if there is an action that you violate, like eating something not kosher, then you get lashes. But if there's no action, like the case of leaving over the Korban Pesach, then one does not get lashes. So here you go. See, he says you do not get lashes. Now, there are three exceptions. If someone makes a vow to do something and then he doesn't do it, he should get lashes anyway. And also someone who substitutes one animal for another. He says the Kiddusha of this, I want to be on that, even though he's just speaking. Nevertheless, you get lashes. And also someone who curses someone else in the name of God, even though it's just words and not actions, he still gets malkut. Okay, so there are three exceptions, but the general rule, according to the Biuda, is that alav she'en bo ma'aseh en lokin alav. So the Yochanan is relying on that braita to know that according to the Biuda, that alav she'en bo ma'aseh en lokin alav. And therefore, when he reads this braita over here, that it's because of the extra aseh, that's why you don't get lashes. But if it was lo totiru by itself, you would get lashes. Well, he's going to derive from that, oh, you see, you get lashes, even though it's hatrat safek. Hatrat safek is a hatrat. That's what he's going to derive. He's not going to derive from here that alav she'en bo maaseh en lokin alav, because he knows that in this source, Rabbi Yehuda himself, at least quoting Rabbi Yosef, says, Lav shen b'maseh en lokin alav. Okay, good. Now we understand why Resh Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan derive one principle or another principle from that source regarding lo totiru. But now we have a new problem. Kashya de Rabbi Yehuda, de Rabbi Yehuda. We have a contradiction between two statements of Rabbi Yehuda. Because in this braita of Rabbi Yehuda regarding lo totiru, Rabbi Yehuda says, if not for the mitzvah aseh of burning it, you would get lashes for leaving it over. That's interesting. You would get lashes even though this is a lav she'en bo maaseh and it's also a safek hatra'ah. So if we just had this baraita alone, we could make both of these inferences that according to the Biuda, lav she'en bo maaseh lokin and safek hatra'ah is a hatra'ah. Well, the second inference, hatrat safek, is a hatra'ah. That contradicts the first baraita here that Resh Lakish brought. And the other inference that lav shen bo maaseh would get malkut is a contradiction to this statement that Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Yoseh HaGalili. And so we have a contradiction between all of these statements of Rabbi Yehuda. So we're going to answer them. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish teretaneh alibad Rabbi Yehuda. According to Resh Lakish, who brought this statement here regarding that has to do with hatrat safek, and over here it sounded like he said hatrat safek is a hatra'ah, and over here he says hatra'at safek is not a hatra'ah. Okay, there's no contradiction, because these are two tradents that are both quoting Rabbi Yehuda, but they have different traditions about what Rabbi Yehuda says. So in fact, it is contradictory, but what can you do? We have two quotes about Rabbi Yehuda, and Resh Lakish was following this one fully, and this one only partially. And so that's how Resh Lakish could figure it out. And and according to Rabbi Yochanan also, we can resolve the contradiction by explaining that this second Baraita is where Rabbi Yehuda is only repeating the opinion of Rabbi Yosei Gelili, but it's not his own opinion. In fact, Rabbi Yehuda's own opinion is fully informed here in this case. Nevertheless, because of those other statements, Resh Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan choose to make one inference from this statement and not all the possible inferences, because they're also informed by those other sources and they're focusing just on one law or the other. And so that way we understand that both of them are relying on Rabbi Yehuda. They're just relying on a different set of statements of Rabbi Yehuda and a different inference from the statement of Rabbi Yehuda regarding lo totiru. We next analyze another case of a lo ta'aseh and a misvat ta'aseh that can rectify it. Tanan hatam. There's a Mishnah later in this perek that teaches hanotel em al habanim. Rabbi Yehuda omer lokeh ve'eno mishaleach. Chachamim omerim mishaleach ve'eno lokeh. If someone takes a mother bird on top of the children, so this is referring to these Pesukim, if someone is on the road and should see a bird's nest on a tree with fledglings or eggs, and the mother sitting on it, lo tikachaem al habanim. Do not take the mother together with the children. In other words, don't take either the eggs or the chicks while the mother is there and thereby destroy the entire family, as it says when Esav is coming to greet Yaakov with 400 troops. He says, Pen yavo v'hikani em al banim. He will come and destroy parents and children, in other words, to destroy both generations at once, and then there'll be no survivors to regenerate the family. And so that's what it means over here. Also, do not take all the generations at once, but rather shalech teshalech etayim ve'tabim tikach lach. Send away the mother, and then you can take the offspring. So here it's a lo ta'aseh followed by an aseh. Now, what happens if someone now violates the lo ta'aseh and takes the egg while the mother is there? So if someone does that, Rabbi Yehuda says, then he gets lashes, and there's no point in sending away the mother after the sin is already done. There's no way to rectify it. In this case, it's not you took the eggs already. It's done. You violated the sin, and so sending the mother bird after you took the eggs is not going to help any. You just get lashes. You have to send away the mother beforehand. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Hachamim, however, say, well, ideally you should send away the mother before. But if you didn't, b'diavad, and you took the eggs while the mother is there, then as long as you send the mother away at some point afterwards, you will not get lashes, so you can rectify it. Has that helped? Didn't the mother have pain when they saw that? Yeah, maybe sending it away, it'll distract them, whatever the reason is. You can rectify and not get lashes. Zeh hakilal. Kol misvat lo ta'aseh, sheyesh ba kum aseh en hayavin aleha. And this is the general principle. Anytime you have a misvat lo ta'aseh, like here, do not take the mother and children, and there's a kum aseh connected with it, like here, shalech teshalach, then you do not get lashes. Amar Rabbi Yochanan en lanu ela zot ve'od acheret. Rabbi Yochanan said about this that we have only this example and one more, even though the Mishnah said zeh kelal, a general rule. Usually general rule means there's lots of examples. Rabbi Yochanan points out, actually it's only shiluach hakan and one other example. Amar le Rabbi Elazar hecha. So Rabbi Elazar asked Rabbi Yochanan, what is it? What's the other example? Amar le lechi tishkach. And he said, Rabbi Yochanan, you find it. Don't ask me. You can do some homework. Here's a challenge. Why don't you go and try to find it? Nefak dak v'ashkach. And sure enough, Rabbi Elazar went and analyzed the matter. And he found the following example, the Tanya. Ones shegeresh, im Yisrael hu machazir veno lokeh, ivim kohen hu lokeh veno machzir. If someone rapes a betula, and then he has to marry her. So he does, he marries her, and then he divorces her. Well, that violates the law. Says he's not allowed to divorce her. So now what happens? If it's Yisrael, he can always rectify it. As long as he remarries her, he will not get lashes. So there you go. That's another example of this general principle that if there's a law ta'aseh, but it also is connected with an aseh, one is not liable as long as you do the aseh, as long as you can still do it. But if he's a kohen who cannot remarry his divorcee, then he will get lashes because he has no possibility of remarrying her. He's not allowed to. If he would, the marriage would be in fact valid, but he'd be violating something else. So he just gets lashes. Now, this understanding, this answer of Rabbi Elazar, that this is a good example, works according to the opinion that said above, this was Resh Lakish, in that Baraita that read Kiyemo velo Kiyemo, that one gets lashes if one violates the law within a certain amount of time. And so that would mean that the court ordered the guy and told him, listen, you have to get remarried and you have till tomorrow or right now. You have to do it right now. And he gets warning and all that for that, and he doesn't do it. So then he violated the law, and then he will get lashes. So that's if he fulfills it and gets married right away, then he won't get lashes. And if he does not fulfill it, he will get lashes. Okay, so then we can understand how this case where he would get lashes and not. But the case, according to the opinion that says he has to actually nullify, it has to do something actively to nullify the possibility of him fulfilling the mitzvah aseh in order for him to get lashes. Then only then he gets lashes. But as long as he doesn't nullify the possibility, even if he delays for a long time the fulfillment of it, he will not get lashes. And since basically he could delay forever, so he would never get lashes. Since that Braita brought both of these possibilities, we have to find a case where both of these possibilities can happen. So if you say kiyamo v'lo kiyamo, we understand how it could happen. He would get lashes if the court told him to do it and he didn't do it. Then he will get lashes. Otherwise, he doesn't get lashes. So we understand the Braita has both possibilities according to kiyamo v'lo kiyamo. But if you say bitilo v'lo bitilo, how can we find a case where it is bitilo and also lo bitilo? Well, we have to apply that to both cases that we just mentioned. In the case of sending away the mother bird, you can have both cases. How so? The guy takes the eggs without sending away the mother bird. And now, if according to Kiyamo, there's no problem there because the court told him to send away the mother bird right now. If he does it, he's okay. If he doesn't do it, he gets lashes. And according to the one, this is bitilo. Also, you can have a case. Let's say he takes the mother bird and he kills it. Well, once he kills it, he can't send it away. There's no way it's not going to fly away after he chops its head off. And so that would be bitelo. And then he would get lashes. And lo bitelo is he just says, I'm going to send it away. I'll do it later. So there's never a time that we can actually give him lashes. So we can fulfill bitelo and lo bitelo in the case of shiluach hakan. Ela ones bitelo velo bitelo hechim meshkachat la. But in the case of a man who raped a woman, a betula, married her, and then divorced her, where would you have a case of bitelo and not bitelo? What could he do to mevatel, to nullify the possibility of fulfilling the mitzvah? And we're assuming now that he has to actively do something to nullify it, not that just it happens on its own. Well, let's say a parallel to the bird. Let's say he killed the bird and then he can't send it away. So maybe it's a case where he murdered that rape victim that he married and now divorced, and so now he cannot possibly marry her again because she is dead. So that would be a case of bitelo, because he nullified the possibility of doing it, and that's when he would get lashes. But that can't be the right case. Amar Rav Shimi mechozna'a. That would not be the right case because he would be liable to the death penalty. And if you're liable to death penalty and to lashes, you only get the worst one, which is a death penalty. So that wouldn't be a case where he gets lashes. So we'd want to find a case where, according to the version that says bitelo velo bitelo, one would get lashes. Amar Rav Shimi mechozna kegon shekibel kiddushin me'acher. Here we have a case where she accepted kiddushin from another man, and once that happens, so now she cannot remarry the original guy, and he cannot fulfill the misvat aseh. But that doesn't work. Amar Rav isha vite shaliach ihi kam mebatilale ila shavita shaliach kol kemine. What's his involvement in it? He has to be the one doing it. So let's say she makes him the original rapist and first husband. She appoints him to be a messenger to accept the money of kiddushin on her behalf. Well, in that case, even though he is the messenger, she is the one that's authorizing him to be the messenger. So she's the one, effectively, who nullified the possibility of them remarrying. So it's not his fault, even though he accepted it, it's only on her behalf. So she's the one that nullified. And if she did not make him a shaliach, and he went and accepted money from someone else, well then, it's not in his power to make her married. If he's not a shaliach, he can accept all the money in the world. But if she didn't make him an agent, then she still will remain unmarried, and he can still do the mitzvah. And the assumption, of course, is that if she just went out and got remarried on her own, then that would not fulfill him nullifying it, because he has to do something to nullify the possibility of him fulfilling the mitzvah in order to get lashes. And so if she gets married on her own, she didn't do it. If she doesn't appoint him a shaliach, and he accepts money, vela kilumhi, he didn't do anything. So therefore, that does not fulfill the criteria. Here we have a case where this man who raped her and then married her and then divorced her, he then makes a vow in public and says, I promise I am never going to marry this woman. And if it's in public, that's a very strong vow that cannot be undone. And so then he'd be nullifying the possibility of doing the misvat aseh. Okay, that answer works according to the opinion, and there are two opinions about this. A vow that's made in public, one cannot undo. Well, then that's an unbreakable vow, and that would fulfill the criteria. But there's another opinion that says even a vow that's made in public can be undone. You go to the sage to undo it. So then he can always undo it, and therefore he can't get lashes now, because there's always a possibility he can undo the vow and then still marry her. And the answer is the madira al da'at rabim. This is a little different. The first one was barabim. He makes the vow in public, but this one he says it in a way that it's on the consent of the public. There's a lot of discussion among the Rishonim exactly what that means. But this one is even stronger. And the Memar says the halacha is that a vow that's made in public can still be undone, but one that's made based on the basis of the consent of the public can never be nullified. And there you go. That would be a case where, where according to the one who said bitel v'lo bitel, one can nullify the possibility of ever doing it again, of ever fulfilling the misvat aseh, because he can't undo the vow and he can't marry, and he can no longer marry her. And he actively did that, and therefore he would get lashes in this case. So good. So we have the case of Shiluach HaKan, and Rabbi Yochanan said there isn't one more case, only one more case, and Rabbi Elazar found the other case. It's the case of Ones. Now the Gemara asks, V'tuleka, and really that's it? There's no other cases? V'haika. Let's propose a few cases that also fulfill that formula of the Zeha Kelal. And we have a mnemonic, Siman Gezel, Mishkan, Pe'ah, Mashkon. That's the three that we're going to see coming up. Gezel, derachamana amar lo tigzol veshi bete gezela. Regarding stealing, the Torah says, do not steal. But then, in a different place in Vayikra says, if you steal, return it. So that's a lo ta'aseh lo tigzol. And if you did steal, return the item that you stole. And then that could rectify the stealing, and then you wouldn't get lashes. So isn't that a good example? And also mashkon, not mishkan, mashkon. taking collateral, lo tavo el beto la'avot avoto, Hashem tashib lo ha'avot ha'shemesh. And Devarim says that if you lend money to someone, you may not go into his house to take a pledge. You can't barge into the guy's house and say, here, I'm taking this to be my pledge. You have to wait outside, and he'll bring you something. That's the lo ta'aseh. And then later on, a couple of Pesukim later, it says that if you have a pledge that he needs, so you have to return to him the pledge when the sun sets. Let's say it's a night garment that he needs. You have to return it. So here we have a lo ta'aseh and an aseh. And so you can, since it's a lo ta'aseh and an aseh, so this would fulfill the zeh kalal also, that the aseh can rectify the lo ta'aseh and you would not get lashes. And in both of these cases, we can find scenarios that will fulfill both versions of the baraita that we saw yesterday, of either kiyamo velo kiyamo. Those are always easy to find, because that just means when a court orders you to say, do this right now, and if he doesn't do it, then that's lo kiyamo. And so kiyamo, if he fulfills it or not fulfills it, if he fulfills the criteria, then he won't get lashes, and if he doesn't fulfill it, then immediately, then he will get lashes. And in this case, it's also easy to find bitilo velo bitilo. How can you actively nullify the possibility of fulfilling the mitzvat aseh? Easy, by destroying the item. If you steal something and then destroy the item, so then you can't return it. Or if you take a pledge and then destroy it, so then you cannot return it to him at night. And that would nullify the possibility of fulfilling the mitzvah aseh, and you would get lashes in that case. So these are two good cases that fulfill all the criteria, right? And the answer is no. Hatam kivan dechayav b'tashlumin en lo mishalem. No, in these cases, since, let's say you don't fulfill the mitzvah aseh, you don't return it, so then what? What's the punishment? You have to pay. You have to pay double for it. And we have a general rule, if you're paying, then you don't also get lashes, because you're not going to get two penalties, and that's why in these cases you're not going to get lashes. We are looking for a case where, because you didn't fulfill the mitzvah aseh, you get lashes. Here, if you don't fulfill the mitzvah aseh, you pay. So these cases are not, don't fit the criteria, and that makes sense why Rabbi Yochanan says there's only one other case. Matkif la Rabbi Zera ha'ika mashkano shel ger umet hager. Rabbi Zera refutes this, and he says, what about if someone takes a collateral from a convert to Judaism who has no other heirs, and then that convert dies? So he took this collateral, so he would have to return the collateral. So let's say he doesn't, or he destroys the collateral. All right, he has to pay money. But when he dies, who are you going to pay money to? If it was a Jew or someone who had heirs, then he could return the money to the heirs, and so that means he would be paying, and he would not get lashes. But here, since the convert dies, you can't pay, and there's no heirs, there's nobody to pay to. So here, would he not get flogged? And so he's getting lashes for a mitzvah, a lo ta'aseh that he violated, and now he cannot fulfill the mitzvah ta'aseh, and so he gets lashes. But if he does fulfill the mitzvah ta'aseh, then he would not get lashes. So isn't this a good criteria? And the answer is no. Hatam gavra bar tashlumin hu v'shibuda deger hu dekapaka. No, this person who took the collateral illegally is in fact someone who needs to pay. He is liable to pay. It's simply that there's nobody to pay because the convert died and has no heirs. So the liability to pay is gone, but just because there's no one to pay doesn't mean he gets lashes. Because really, he himself has an obligation to pay, but there's no one to give the payment to, so now that's gone, and once that's gone, there's no penalty at all. So he also does not get lashes, and therefore this is not a case that fulfills all the criteria of a lo ta'aseh that also has an aseh associated with it. And if you do the aseh, you wouldn't get lashes, but if you don't do the aseh, you would get lashes. There's no case here where you would get lashes because either you're paying or you need to pay, or the guy dies with no heirs and there's no one to pay, and then there's no punishment at all. But in all scenarios, one is not getting lashes. Next, we try another example. We have the mitzvah to leave a corner of the field for the poor, where the pasuk says, do not wholly reap the corner of your field. That's a lo taseh, not to reap everything for yourself. And there's also mitzvah taseh in the same pasuk to leave it to the poor and the convert. So what happens if one does harvest his entire field and doesn't leave any over? Well, then he has a way to make it up. Demashkachata bekiyemo velo kiyemo, bitelo velo bitelo ditnan. Misvat pe'a lafrish min ha'kama, lo yafrish min ha'kama mafrish min ha'omarin, lo yafrish min ha'omarin mafrish min ha'keri, ad shelo mereach, mircho me'aser venoten lo. We see from this Mishnah that there is a way to make it up, because the mitzvah lechatechila is to leave a corner of the field for the poor while it's still standing grain, while still on the ground. Just don't touch it. Let the poor people come and harvest it. But let's say he didn't leave it while it was standing grain, and he harvested everything. That's okay. B'di'avad, he can leave for the poor from the sheaves. Leave a few sheaves for the poor. And if he didn't do it while it was in sheaves and tied up, and he already made it into piles for storage, then he can still separate some and leave it for the poor from the storage, as long as he did not smooth it out. If he already smoothed out the pile, and that's the last stage in the preparation of it for storage, so then at that point he can't just give anything to the poor, because he has to take maaser. Before that, he didn't have an obligation to take maaser yet until the pile is smoothed out. So after that point, once it's smoothed out, then he has to first take maaser. But then after he takes maaser, and whatever appropriate maaser, gives it to the Levi, whoever, then he can take some and he can still give to the poor person. However, after that, once he grinds it into flour, then he cannot give pe'ah anymore. So we see a number of things here. First of all, there is a lo ta'aseh, but there's also an aseh. It says, do not reap all of your field, but if you do, then you can still give to the poor at a later point. That's number one. There is also an ending time. If you do that, then you won't be able to give any more. And that way, it fulfills this. The kiyamo velo kiyamo, there is a way to fulfill it at the right time. If the court comes and says, hey, you didn't give it yet, you have to give pe'ah, so you better do it right now. And then if you don't, you get lashes. And if you do give to the poor when they tell you to, you won't get lashes. So that version of the baraita can be fulfilled in this case. And also, bitelo velo bitelo, you can nullify the obligation by doing all these activities, not giving any to the poor until it's already ground into flour. And now, at the point that you grind it, you can't give to the poor anymore. So you nullify the possibility of fulfilling the aseh. And at that point, one would get lashes. So here we have yet another example that can fit into that zeh hakelal. So why did Yochanan say there's only one more example? Pe'ah looks like it's a good example too. And the answer is, we're following the opinion of Rabbi Ishmael, who says you can even separate pe'ah from dough. You have a big dough and you say, oh, I never separated pe'ah. You could take part of the dough and leave it and give it to the poor. So even then you can fulfill it, so you can't nullify it. No, for Rabbi Ishmael also, there is a way to nullify it. For example, you ate the dough. Once it's eaten, it's totally destroyed, and by eating it, you're nullifying the possibility of fulfilling the mitzvah aseh. And then this fits in with all the criteria, so this should be yet another example that Rabbi Yochanan should include. So now we have Rabbi Yochanan says only one other example, but according to this, we have pe'ah, and we also had ones. That's two other examples. Ela zot ve'od acheret aha. You know what? In fact, when Rabbi Yochanan says we have only this and one other example, it was in fact talking about pe'ah. Aval ones la, and that which we said before, that the other example is ones, the rapist, in fact is not a case. Because remember, back in ones, we were trying to figure out a way in which one can actively nullify the possibility of doing the mitzvah taseh. He raped someone, he married her, he divorced her, and what can he do to nullify? He himself, not her, not something she does, like she getting remarried, or something he does. And we answered up above that if he makes a vow on the consent of the public, and that cannot be undone, then if he makes that vow, there's no way he could do the mitzvah taseh. So once he makes that vow, he will get lashes. But that is not true, in fact, because when do we say that even a vow that's made dependent on the consent of the public, that it cannot be nullified? That's only if it's an optional matter. But if it's for the purpose of a mitzvah that you're nullifying it, then even that can be nullified. And here it would be for a purpose of a mitzvah. If he would come and say, listen, I made this vow in public on condition of the public that I would not marry this woman, but it's a mitzvah for me to marry her, then that could be nullified, and therefore there's no way to for the man to actively nullify bitelo this obligation, and so he can never actually get lashes according to that version of the Baraita, and therefore this case of ones does not fit the criteria, and in fact we have only one case, and that is pe'ah. And now we'll just give an example of a vow of this type which can be nullified. Ki ha'dahu makre dardeke dava pasha binuke adere rav acha ve'ah dere ravina ve'la ishtekach dedayik kevate. For example, there was a certain teacher of children who was negligent in the supervision of the kids. So he wasn't doing a good job controlling the classroom or whatever problems went on. And Rav Acha made a vow dependent on the public that he cannot teach again. This guy, no good. However, Ravina later on undid that vow and made him teach again. Why? Because there was no teacher who was as accurate as he was. Whatever he was teaching, dikduk or understanding, or the proper reading, way to pronounce the words, there was no other teacher that was as good in terms of his content, of making sure that they were so very accurate. Although his classroom management skills needed fixing, but he was able to undo that vow, even though it was a vow dependent on the public, because it was for a mitzvah. And that's how we prove that any vow, in fact, can be undone if it's for the purpose of a mitzvah. The Mishnah continues and says that someone who eats unslaughtered animal, or a terefa, an animal that was not healthy, will not live for 12 months, even if it's given proper slaughter, or shikas, creepy crawlies and other creeping animals, all these people deserve lashes if they do it on purpose. Amar Rav Yehuda, Haiman da'achal binita debe keraba. So Rav Yehuda says that someone who eats this fish-like creature that's found in furrows of a field, so you mean you plow a field and inside there's these weird worm-like, fish-like creatures, creepy crawlies. If someone eats it, they get lashes because of the pasuk in Parashat HaShavua. So happens to be creeping animals that creep on the ground shall not be eaten, and they creep on the ground. Maybe it's something like this. And in fact, there was a person who ate this fish-like creature, and that's found in the ground. And Rav Yehuda did indeed give him lashes. Amar Abaye achal putita loke arba'ah. Abaye says if someone eats a putita might be something like this, a flatfish or whatever it is, a creeping thing found in the sea, is flagged with 4 sets of lashes. Why? Because in Vayikra 11, there's 2 prohibitions there about creeping animals in the sea. Pasuk says, any that do not have fins and scales in the sea and the rivers, you shall not eat their flesh. That's one. And then there's another one in Devarim 14, and any that do not have fins and scales, you shall not eat. And the parallel in Parashat Re'eh, Shemini and Re'eh. So that's 2 for the things that live in the sea. And besides that, there's another 2 for creeping animals in general. That's back in Vayikra 11. You shall not render yourself detestable with any creeping animal that creeps, neither shall you render yourselves impure with them. So that's 2 different pasuk, 2 different prohibitions, even though they were in one pasuk. And therefore you get a total of 4, even though you only ate one item, you still get 4 sets of lashes. Nemala lokech hamesh. If someone eats an ant, they get 5 sets of lashes. Mishum sheres hashores al haares. So he's going to get 2 that we just mentioned. It's not a sea creature, so these first two don't apply. But these do apply. Detestable things with any creeping. So those two in that pasuk apply. And then there's another pasuk of creeping animals that creep on the ground should not be eaten. That's 3. And then you also have all creeping animals that creep on the ground should not be eaten. Another pasuk. And then another, they're all one after the other. In Vayikra 11, neither shall you render yourselves impure with any matter of creeping things that crawl upon the ground. So that's 5 pasukim altogether, 5 prohibitions. Sirah lo keshesh mishum sheretz ha'of. If someone eats a wasp, he gets 6 sets of lashes. In addition to the 5 for eating an ant, there's another one because of winged creeping creatures, as a pasuk in Devarim 14 says. And all winged creeping creatures and are impure for you, they may not be eaten. So that's up to 6. That's the most. Now there are other things that for which they're also disgusting. Not eating bugs, but someone who delays relieving himself, that's a disgusting thing. You're keeping all that waste inside of your body, so you should not delay going to the bathroom. Another violation of this is someone who drinks out of a horn of a bloodletter. Here's an example. This one happens to be made out of glass, probably very expensive, fancy one, but you would put this on the skin and then someone would do sucking over here, and this would be used to suck out the blood for bloodletting. Other ones might be made out of other things, but the point is it's shaped out like a horn, and this has a lot of dried coagulated blood in it. It's a disgusting item. It's a medical device, but you would not want to drink from it. If someone does drink from it, they violate this law of lo teshakesu. Amar Rav Huna, risek tisha nemalim vehebi echad hay v'shliman kezayit lo keshesh chamesh mishum b'riya v'echad mishum kezayit nevela. We mentioned over here that if one eats an ant, that would be a whole ant. That applies to a whole ant. There's 5 sets of lashes. Now Rav Huna says if someone took 9 ants and crushed them, and mixes them all together, and also adds 1 whole ant. Chai doesn't mean that it's alive; it means it's whole, and all together it forms a kezayit. Then one gets 6 sets of lashes, 5 because it ate the whole ant, and another one because it has a kezayit of nevela. So if the ant is crushed, then one only gets lashes if it forms a kezayit. But if it's whole, even if it's less than the kezayit, because it's a whole being, one gets lashes for that, and maybe multiple sets if it violates multiple prohibitions. Rava Amar Rabbi Yochanan, afilu shenayim vehu. Rav Yosef Amar afilu echad vehu. Rava says it doesn't have to be 9 and 1, even if it's 2 crushed up ants and the live one, that also one gets 6 sets of lashes. And Rav Yosef, even 1 crushed up one and 1 live one would get 6 sets of lashes. But there's no machloket between them. It depends how big the ants are. If it's a very big ant, so even 1 crushed big ant plus a whole big ant, even 2 ants, if they're really big, might add up to the shiur of a kezayit, and therefore would get 2 lashes. But if they're smaller ants, then you might need a lot of them, maybe even 10 ants, in order to get up to a kezayit. And on that delicious note, we say, Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.